Okay, so second reading is from 1 Peter 1:17-28. I might have been calling to say, hey, you need confession. Or I heard you want to go. Sam said you want to go. I want to stick around a while.
Yeah,
Who's going to read it?
I'll read it.
Okay.
A reading from the first letter of St. Peter. Beloved, if you invoke as Father him who judges impartially according to each one's works, conduct yourself with reverence during the time of your sojourning, realizing that you were ransomed from your futile conduct handed on by your ancestors, not with perishable things like silver or gold, but with precious blood of Christ, as of a spotless and unblemished lamb. He was known before the foundation of the world, but revealed in the final time for you, who through him believed in God, who raised him from the dead and gave him glory, so that your faith and hope are in God. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God. So St. Peter, first he starts off with beloved, right? That's a very affectionate term, right? Beloved. So he's saying, you invoke him as Father, right? That's a very affectionate term. We're saying Father. No other religions call upon God as Father. He's Father, right? And we're his children. That's Papa. That's affectionate. But remember, he judges impartially. He's not going to show favoritism or anything else. He's going to judge us according to our works. So is that faith alone?
No.
No, we're going to get judged. He's going to separate us, the sheep from the goats, because he's given us the grace to do works. And so we're called not just to piddle around. If God's calling you to help somebody, help them. If God's calling you to share your wealth and feed the poor or something, help them. We should be doing something. When we give alms, it says. It doesn't say if you give alms. It says when you give alms, when you fast. It's just assumed that these are part of our normal Christian life, is that we should be sharing what we have. I mean, if you're in poverty and you don't have anything to share, then, share anyways.
Yeah.
Your time.
Yeah, there's corporate, which is bodily type help and spiritual type help. And so we should be praying. So there's spiritual works of mercy and corporal works of mercy. And we should be doing all of them. And so, don't just do one over the other. If you can help others, God wants you to do that too. But he's saying, conduct yourself with reverence during this time of your sojourning. So this isn't our home. He's saying you're a pilgrim. You're on a pilgrimage, right? You're just passing through this life. This isn't your home. You're sojourning. I kind of like that. You're on a trip, and your home is heaven. You're just passing through. And while you're here, realize that you were ransomed from your futile conduct. And so this is one way of saying it. But in other translations, it says, ransom. We talk about ransom, and they would pay a ransom to free a slave. Right? Now we think of ransom, and it's like, this kidnapper's holding this child hostage, and he wants a ransom. But that has negative connotations. But in the past, you could buy somebody out of slavery and pay a ransom for it. It wasn't a negative thing. God bought us from the slavery to sin and death, right? With his precious blood. Not with money or things that are perishables, but with his precious blood of the Christ, the God-man, his suffering and death, right? Of the spotless lamb. And so he's saying, don't live in this way. Don't live like you formerly used to. You used to be controlled by your lusts. That's what it says. Futile conduct was lusts. And it would be lust of the flesh, lust of the mind, that's what it says in other translations. You were ransomed from all these lusts, this way you would live, according to the flesh and worldly things. We're not to be controlled by that anymore. He's saying, you've been freed from that. Don't go back to that, because that's a dead end. It's a dead end because you were in it. And I think that's what people don't realize. And Peter also says it's like a dog that goes back to vomit, or pig that goes back to wallow in the mud. It's like, you were there. Why are you going to defile yourself again? You were free to this. There was a chain on you, and Jesus came and opened the chain and got the lock off, but you want to carry that chain around anyways. He's saying, you're free to that. Let it go. And I think that's part of it too, is that we have to let go of the attachment to sin that we have. Because we may be attached to sin. And that's where you say, Lord, am I attached to this? And we may have attachments that need to be broken. And it's like, Lord, break me free from these attachments to sin. Because I would if I could. You know, that's where I'm not doing it, but boy, I sure would if I could. And that's where you gotta, you know, because in your mind, sometimes you're doing it. I would if I could. So you've already committed the mortal sin because you're doing it. If you've murdered someone in your mind, or you've lusted for somebody in your mind where you're actually taking it to that point, you've already murdered or committed adultery. In Jesus' strict terms in the Sermon on the Mount, it's tough. And so we can be free to that because we have God living within us. And you say, okay, Lord, you know, I fell and help me. And that's what you do. You make a firm purpose of amendment. And, you know, God will help you. And you know, but you do have to resist the devil. It does say resist the devil. Don't just give in. What's that?
I pray to Saint Michael.
Exactly. And that's an excellent place. So he was known was known before the foundation of the world, but revealed in the final time for you, who through him believe in God, who raised him from the dead and gave him glory, so that your faith and hope are in God. So our faith and hope are in God. He's known from the very beginning of the world what was going to happen. So I think that's where this was God's plan all the way along. These events are realized in God's time when we were actually able to comprehend it. And most Jews didn't, right? They didn't realize about the suffering servant. And I think we'll stop with that because when we get into the gospel, it's the road to Emmaus, and we'll talk about that.